Welcome everyone to this Privacy Espresso series. Today we are going to discuss about one of the most relevant regulatory framework that we have in the EU in particular. This series is going to deal with many others, so we are going to interview different experts in order to know which is the broad framework that we have at the European level at the moment. The guest of today is Jan Tomisek from the law firm ROWAN Legal, coming from Czech Republic as exclusive representative for the Privacy Rules Alliance. And today with Jan, we are going to speak about a specific framework that is named NIS or NIS II. So Jan, first of all, thanks a lot for being with us today. Can you provide us with an overview on what is this NIS II and which are the main differences from the previous one, because there was a NIS and now we're speaking about a NIS II. So what's the difference between the two?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to this Privacy Espresso. The first thing to note about NIS, I think, is that it is a directive. That means it has to be transposed in the national legislations of each member state. This is different from the GDPR, for example. GDPR is effective directly in all member states without need for any further action. NIS has to be transposed. And if we compare the current or the former NIS directive and NIS II, then I think there are two key differences. That NIS, the former directive, was much narrower in scope. NIS II covers more sectors. It covers public administration. It covers waste management. It's broader in its scope with regard to energy companies, with regard to digital infrastructure. For example, cloud service providers didn't fall in scope mostly of the former NIS directive. Now they fall in scope. And second thing is that obligations of which are imposed by NIS II, or which member states have to impose based on NIS II, are much stricter, or should be much stricter, because nothing prevented member states from imposing quite strict obligations already under the current NIS directive, but not many member states did. And the level of harmonization across the European Union was quite uneven. The obligations differed between member states. Now, the quite strict requirements should be imposed by all member states on their entities covered by NIS II directive. So these are the two key differences in my point of view.
Perfect. And thanks a lot for this brief introduction. I have another specific question. One of the main reasons why we are interviewing you as member from Czech Republic on this specific topic is that Czech Republic has been the first EU country to publish a draft transposition of the NIS II. So I would like to ask you if this process has already raised some unexpected challenge or any question that we would like our audience to be aware of.
Yeah. Thank you for this question. The situation in the Czech Republic is a bit specific, since we have a Cybersecurity Act already from 2014. So our Cybersecurity Act came even before NIS I, and it was only slightly modified based on NIS I. And this is also why our Cybersecurity Authority was very active in the topic of negotiation of NIS II. And when there was already a political compromise on the text, they started to work on a national implementation legislation, which was published in January, which is more or less 3 weeks after NIS II itself was published in the official Gazette of the European Union. So that was very quick, and it gives us a lot of insight in the practical level, what will NIS II mean for companies? Because NIS II covers two types of entities. These are essential and important entities. In the relevant sectors, we can roughly say that medium enterprises fall in the important category, large enterprises fall in the essential category. And that is a very rough approximation. There are many exceptions to this rule, but in general, this is how the directive will be applied across the European Union. But it is difficult to learn from the text of the directive what will be the particular obligations of the companies. We have a rough list of security measures that the member states have to impose on the companies, but we learn very little from the directive as regards to the information system that will be covered, regarding details of data breach notification, etc. And from the Czech national legislation presented by our cybersecurity authority, we learn a lot of details, how the authority is thinking about identification of assets, about risk management, about the data breach notification. I think this is very valuable. What is my most important takeaway that will probably be interesting for other member states, but the approaches might differ slightly, is that NIS II does not apply to all information system in an organization. There, one can read it also in this meaning, but my interpretation is that we have to reduce the scope of application only to the information systems that are relevant to the service provided by the organization. Because you fall in scope of the NIS II if you provide a regulated service, for example, sale of electricity or distribution of electricity, and then only the systems relevant to this service should fall in scope of the directive and fall in the scope of all the security measures. And this is the approach taken by the Czech authority. I hope it will be the approach taken also by other member states, because it's the only rational approach, but we'll see.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I heard you mentioning that in Czech Republic, you already had a regulatory framework in the sector. So these maybe have been helping you in starting and drafting so fast, so quickly, a transposition. In that regard, speaking about your country specifically, are there any specificities in the Czech regulation if compared with the NIS II? So what's particular of your country in this field?
Yes, there are two important specifics that go over the scope of NIS II, but I think they are both more or less relevant, and they are a topic for other member states and will probably be raised or already were raised by other member states. And that is, our national competent authority has used the opportunity of presenting new transposition legislation to include also measures on, let's say, 5G security. So we do not currently have any legislation that would prevent vendors from risky countries to supply hardware and software and services to telco sector and other critical sectors. We only have soft law on this, and the National Security Authority has presented a legislation that also covers this topic. And I think this is also relevant in other member states and already discussed or already legislated. And second are data localization requirements. That is something that goes partly against the efforts of the European Union. We have the regulation on non-personal data, which more or less prevents data localization requirements for individual member states. But even the regulation on non-personal data has an exception for national security. And this exception was triggered by Czech Republic, and part of the proposal is a requirement at least to be ready to operate certain critical services solely from the Czech Republic. So for in case there is a crisis in another member state that prevents the provider from another member state to provide a service, so apply to Czech Republic, then, for example, Czech telco operators will have to be ready to take this over and run the service from their infrastructure in the Czech Republic.
Wonderful. And Jan, we are running out of our time. So I would like to thank you very much for being with us today, for providing this quick overview on what is the NIS II with a lot of practical tips that makes it definitely interesting for our audience. I would like to thank our audience, of course, for being with us today, and I invite them to follow this Privacy Espresso series, but in general, our Privacy Espresso, in order to stay up to date with the latest news on privacy and data protection worldwide. So thanks you all, thanks Jan again, and also thanks to the ROWAN Legal team for being with us, and looking forward to meet you soon. Bye everyone.